I describe this place as being kind of timeless. It's like you can come back here, and if you didn't know what year this was, you might have a hard time guessing. I used to paint kind of as a hobby, but my painting started getting a lot better when I started hanging out here and painting.
So in a typical year, Oxbow has its bread and butter in the summer, and we offer a full roster of, upwards of 50 classes that can be taken for college credit or not. We have specialty studios in metals, in ceramics, in glass, and in print. We also have, a rich history and also present of painting classes happening here. We also have visiting artists during the summer. So every week a different visiting artist comes to work with folks on campus. They're not here in a traditional teaching capacity, but they do an artist lecture and other programming that people on campus can engage with.
I think Oxbow, it has lived a very long time as a very organic, loose organization, where other places like it may have already failed, decades, generations ago. It's tenacious, and it's, it's tenacious about its style, and it is, managed to sustain itself. So some part of me feels like it's delivered on something over and over again to a point where people who know about it, it's like the art world's best kept secret or something, like people who kind of are in the know and know about it. They all say magical, which is fascinating to me. Everyone says, oh, it's magical. Like people who came here 10 years ago that I meet are like, oh, it's so magical. They're like, okay, it's magical. But there does seem to be a kind of word of mouth about Oxbow that maintains that.
Whether people are here for literally 2 weeks for an artist residency or a class, or here for 25 years, as some of our staff have been, it is a place that really leaves a mark on people, that people return to, whether physically or just in their minds. Really wonderful people are drawn here. I think there is like a truth to some places and some communities have this energy and this frisson that just like attracts people who want to care and want to be involved. A thing that I often say is like if you're not interested in community, if you're not invested in actively being involved in a creative, caring community, this is not the place for you. It's not the place for an artist who's interested in just being in their studio, advancing their own career in a very, solo kind of auteur, stereotypical way. This is a place for people who really care about exchange.
Having this very cross-generational group of people living and working together for an intense period of time is just, it's generous and it's challenging, and I think that's the thing that shakes things loose for people. It's like a place where people can, I think, be very vulnerable, but it feels safe to be very vulnerable.
Seeing everybody here be so accepting of each other, it's like, why can't I do that for myself? If I told people here who've only known me for a few months things I think about myself sometimes, then they'd be like, you're insane. Don't say that about my friend Lucy. So seeing that kind of self-acceptance and self-care modeled by other people here has been really influential.
The history about Oxbow that hits me the most are these like costume parties.
I'm sure people have talked to you about the parties that we have on Friday nights.
We love dancing, having big dance parties is always a priority as often as we can. It feels very summer camp, but we all like really respect each other as professionals and experts. Like we can be as silly and weird as we want to be, but at the end of the day, there's like so many people here who are like technically like so good at their jobs and also know how to be a total clown. So that's like a big part of the spirit. It's just master clown.
I think the dining situation, meal times are the heart of Oxbow because it's what brings everyone together. It's scheduled 3 times a day. You know it's going to be there. And it's a chance for you to like break out of that classroom setting and talk face to face. Sharing a meal is a very intimate experience, and it's a very magical experience. And like being able to share a meal like with, say, a visiting artist who's here, who's like maybe someone that you admire from your art classes, you can literally like sit down and have a meal with them. Like where else in the world can you do that with your idols? Such as like Claus Oldenburg washed dishes here at one point, which I find super rad. And like Jim Henson spent time here.
I love the way that feeding everybody together builds community. It brings people together in a way that breaks down hierarchies.
I find it really exciting to be the sustenance behind all of this like revolutionary art making and like all of these radical thoughts that are happening here. In most educational settings, you're not sharing meals with your teachers and you're not drinking a beer at the fire with your teachers. And here you get to really, it kind of breaks down the hierarchy of student-teacher relationships, and that can be a very powerful and transformative experience.
The academic institutional environment can be so performative, you know, but at Oxbow there's more space where people can kind of, you know, remove that a bit more, sometimes literally, and can engage in more of a fuller spectrum.
But coming here as faculty was really a really positive experience for me. It felt like a place you could really break, you know, with tradition, or you could sort of try out radical different things and have a much more holistic, cohesive classroom teaching, mentoring experience. And it really was an amazing experience for me as a teacher. I really see it as a pretty exceptional environment to get an education. I think all of the things about Oxbow that people love, that it's this like beautiful community, or it's this kind of social aspect to it that they value, I can appreciate that that's what they value, and I think that's amazing. But to me, it's that it's such a phenomenal learning environment. It's so intergenerational, and it just allows for a kind of risk-taking and mess-making that a school, a regular program wouldn't provide.
This place offers a lot of room for experimentation. I mean, I remember students, like, from a painting class, actually, like, taking a canoe out into the lagoon, having sort of rigged up, like, a wooden oil painting box situation that had, like, a flotation device in the bottom, diving into the water, and then working on a painting, like a watercolor, like, dipping her paintbrush in the lagoon and then painting on the... I just feel like those sort of things, this place sort of, like, asks you to kind of think outside the box and do crazy stuff.
I run the metal shop, but it's a very flexible space, so it can turn into like more of a wood shop. It can be a space for like more performance-based classes or research-based classes. It's like a whole variety. It's all the way up to like hardcore blacksmithing and foundry with like pouring iron and things that are maybe a little closer to my wheelhouse. So I'm used to being in a metal shop that is just a metal shop, but this place, like almost everything is on wheels and it changes constantly, and I have to change too. And also the metal shop is almost entirely outdoors, and I think sometimes, as much as I explain that to faculty ahead of time, sometimes people still show up and are very surprised that we're like susceptible to all the elements up there. It's great on like beautiful days, but sometimes it rains for a whole week and you have to be really flexible.
I think the thing that I didn't even know was possible till I was here was that kind of the joy in innovating constantly, because you're constantly getting feedback, as opposed to having this very tight 3 hours of a class. Everyone goes home, gets on with their life, everything changes. But being in it sort of constantly on a day-to-day basis, it allowed for this really responsive, flexible way of teaching. Just like, yeah, let's do it like this. I could just change it. Let's go pick up these things. Let's go dumpster diving for cardboard right now, because that's what we need. But I think that kind of like responsiveness was exciting, honestly. And I don't know, I mean, the things that the students that I worked with made and the conclusions that they came to, or the paths that they went down, and then the kind of things that I would hear from them afterwards about how that had been like the best class, the best experience of their life, the best class they'd ever taken. Years later saying that this class completely changed their life, or they apply things they learned in that class to, you know, radically different parts of their life. Like, that blows my mind. That is something that I guess I feel like is really possible when you have this sort of all-in 24/7 teaching and learning experience that you would never get in a regular classroom.
In order to want to take the kind of risks necessary for creative output, there has to be like a certain level of like safety around you, you know, like hierarchy of needs style. Like you have to be fed, like we feed people really well here, you have space. Like, yeah, the community element is just like a sounding board of folks who, you know, will like give you honest feedback where you can fail, and like, I'm not gonna lose my job here if I make bad art. And I'm not gonna lose my friends either. It's like if you have that space to fail, then you also have space to like surprise yourself.
We are family, really. We kind of just want to have this sort of bubble in the woods be the way we wish the rest of the world could be, I think.
It is a place that will shift your thinking and shift your work in ways that are really exciting and beneficial. You know, it'll lead to growth somewhere in your life, personally or in the studio. And I think that's the best I could say, because it seems like it's different for different people what that is, you know? But consistently, that's what people say. So, you know, it's also just gorgeous, and it's a wonderful place to sort of be in the summer. It's a beautiful environment. It's rich with history. We feed people incredibly good meals. You know, I mean, all of those things are true, but there's a force that happens in this living in a small, intimate community as a learning environment that'll just like, it'll challenge you in really positive ways.
Hi, I'm Pam Jaccarino, Editor-in-Chief of Luxe Interiors Design. Welcome to Masterclass. Today, I'm thrilled to speak with designer Melanie Turner, who artfully combines cultures, styles, colors, and eras to produce refined yet livable spaces. Please welcome award-winning designer Melanie Turner. So Melanie, it's so great to be with you today. And I want to just kick things off by congratulating you and your team, because your project was chosen for September-October cover of Luxe. I know this is airing a little bit later, but congratulations. It was an amazing project.
Oh my gosh, it was like a dream come true. I have been wanting to be in Luxe forever, and to make the cover was just like, all my dreams came true. I couldn't believe it.
So this is a master class in which, you know, we like to ask how you become the famous and wonderful designer that you are. And so I want to take it all the way back, right? You're originally from Wales.
Yes.
You came to the States at a young age and settled in Florida, and then went to college in Georgia to study design. You live in Atlanta. And it's interesting, I'm always interested in sort of people's backgrounds and how that gets imprinted a bit into their design style. And if you look closely at your work, there's sort of nods to those places in your projects. Can you talk a little bit about how that experience of growing up in all of those areas sort of shape you and your design aesthetic?
Yes, you know, you never realize at the time. You tend to, as an adult, think of like, oh my gosh, this is the way I lived as a kid, but it does form you. And I I always wanted the sofa and two end tables that matched. And I grew up in a very bohemian kind of home where there was huge Coca-Cola, pop art, and Warhol, and funky stuff that I was just dying of embarrassment. But now it's ingrained in me. I was fortunate to have grown up in Florida and California, so I kind of have a very casual and yet effortless, easy lifestyle about the spaces. Even if there are city homes and they're more formal, there's something that makes you want to walk in and enjoy the space. And also, of course, just being around lots of art growing up. So that influenced me. But for the most part, I would say California and Florida, huge influence.
That's interesting to me, just as an observer of your work too, because there's so much classic design in your work. It definitely has that sort of relaxed feel, but it also, there's a sophistication to it as well,
Yeah.
Which I think is interesting.
Yeah.
How did you even get into design? Like, do you go to school to design? Is this something that you're like, I have a passion for design? Or talk a little bit about that. How you got into this profession?
Well, like if you're a creative person and you're an artist in your soul, it's just a matter of what direction you go into. And I mean, as a little girl, I would walk into rooms and just turn to my mom and say, oh my gosh, they need to get rid of their pillows, like really young, or building tree houses or forts and bushes, like all those things. And my parents were great about giving me the creativity to do my own space. So I just think it's innate. And then fortunately, I was young enough to know that that's what I wanted to do as a career, and, went to college and got in my car the day after high school and drove to Atlanta to go to school here. So
that's amazing. We're going to fast forward a bit, right? You're in Wales, you're in Florida, you're in Georgia, you're in California, all of this gets digested. And you began designing interiors for homes that your husband constructed, including your own home. On a dare from your husband, you entered a design contest that won you the top residential prize and ended up with you being on the cover. Can you talk a little bit about, that defining moment, and also, where did your passion come from to want to get into design in the first place?
It was during the real estate recession. Everybody was going bust. And my husband being a developer, all I was looking at was just trying to sell his home. So I was doing the interiors, the magazines were picking them up. So I didn't realize the silver lining through all this was I was building a portfolio. So I had a portfolio and he dared me, like you said, and I won the Southeast Designer of the Year award. Both happened and nobody even knew who I was because I was using my maiden name, Melanie Turner. So it was like, okay, you win the crown, but everybody goes back into their holes. And it's like, what do I do with this? So I decided that I wanted to be on the cover of a magazine. So I had hundreds of photographs of a project, actually my own personal home. And I took the dining room, and then this sounds crazy, but I was so naive. I didn't even realize the header on the magazines come in different colors. I cut a veranda one, which happened to be in a bright green, put it on a bulletin board in my room. And all I had literally was a folding table and a computer. That was it, in a 5 by 10 space. And every day I would look at it and be like, that's going to happen. And lo and behold, there's a little bit of story in between there, but it ended up making the cover. And when I opened the middle, they used to actually, before everybody was sending it via computers, you would get it in the mail first and not tell you who was on the cover. And there was on the cover. And I put it next to the magazine. And I think you have a photograph of it. It's exactly the same color header, the same photograph, everything. So
talk about that.
Yeah,
that's definitely an infomercial for the laws of attraction, for sure.
Oh my gosh. I mean, anybody who doesn't believe in it, I don't know how it happened, but I mean, even in my office, it was just crazy. So that was the total shift where, okay, this is supposed to happen. So yes, it was exciting.
Let's talk a little bit about your work, which, feels very powerful, edited, very intentional. I love that you have referenced John Saladino, the great John Saladino, as a source of design inspiration in your own work. Talk a little bit about, obviously you're working for clients, as every designer is out to, create a home for their clients. But I think also every designer has sort of their style and type of interior work that just gets you excited. Can you talk a little bit more about that? And why John Saladino? Or why not John Saladino?
Yeah, that's the question, right? He's amazing. I was fortunately, after winning that Southeast Designer of the Year award, I was next door. My office is next door to ADAC, which is Atlanta Decorative Arts Center. And I was parking, and there he sat by himself, all by himself. And I was, walked up and sat and talked with him. So it was just amazing that happened. But anyway, well, basically, I look at I try to decide, like, what is our design? Because if you look in our book, it's a lot of different styles based in classicism, like you said. But overall, if I was to give a defining look for us, it would be very whimsical. I don't think I take design too seriously. I think life is serious enough. So it's whimsical and it's creative. And at the same time, it's very fresh and edited, taking what's steeped in classicalness and then adding color or no color, but just simplifying it. And as far as like what gets me excited these days, I think I always love good architecture. I mean, if you start with a beautiful canvas, the work is almost done for you. But if I could ask for anything, it's a decisive client. I think that's, I used to ask for big projects. I used to ask for money. I used to ask for creativity. Now I just want decisiveness, because it's almost like you have to get out of your own way as the client, and let the professionals really hold your hand. But that would be what
to make that whimsical, magical interior, come across for sure.
Yes.
I want to talk about your book.
Age helps too, because you have the ability to be able to be like, okay, if you want to go that way, but that's not what I would do, where I would never say that when I was younger, ever. So
that's also, it's I feel with age sometimes comes hopefully confidence to be able to say what you mean and mean what you say.
Absolutely.
This past year, congratulations, your first book, Inviting Interiors, A Fresh Take on Beautiful Rooms, came out. Please hold it up for everyone to see.
Thank you.
It's also, it's such a great cover and a beautiful read. It emphasizes creating understated yet elegant and timeless spaces using balance and light and scale and color, which are sort of the amazing tools of the design trade. What was it like for you to see your book, like have it all come together? And, talk a little bit about what that was like for you as a designer to see sort of your magnus opus come together and be packaged so beautifully.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, it was quite unexpected. I had been waiting for years. I'm not the type of person who just or noticeably just jumps in and just like, yeah, I'm ready for this, because I think it's a building pattern. And, everyone says, oh, you're an overnight success. No, it takes years for anybody to really be creative and get what their style is and build up a business. So I didn't think I was ready. And I reached out to Jill Cohen, that we know. And I just was like, hey, when you're in town, can you come talk with me? And I really just wanted to do it on my house, which is a 100-year-old Italian house, because I feel like the steward and the keeper of it, and wanted to be able to have a book on the house. So that's what it was about. And she just is like, no. And I was like, she said, I want to do it on you. And I was like, what? And she just is like, you have this breadth of work. I didn't think we had enough. So honestly, the feeling was surreal and surprise.
I feel like you probably have a second book. And if so, what would your second book be about?
Yes. So it's going to be about my house, which is a 1923 16th century Italian Baroque house. And another project I'm doing in Miami, which is a 100-year-old house on the waterway, with same. That's my goal. So everyone, law of attraction, put it out there.
Melanie, in previous interviews, you've spoken a lot about your bold decision making. Where does this talk about and a confidence, right? Where does that confidence come from? And for other designers that are watching and design enthusiasts, can you talk a little bit about how you take that confidence and your energy and sort of apply it to your life and your work?
Yes. Well, I think confidence really comes from being loved. And I was fortunate to have a dad who raised me to tell me I could do anything I wanted to do except be president of the United States because I wasn't born here. That was the only thing I couldn't do. But other than that, it was just, I think that's where it boils down to, is just being loved. But even then, also, I think confidence comes from helping others. So if you give things away, if you give design away, if you mentor like the designers in my office, if you're just constantly giving, it just comes back to you and makes you feel good. There's also no rules in design. Like if you love something and it really moves you, there's like, who wrote the rule that you have to do certain things a certain way? My biggest problem is people don't want to be different anymore. When I was growing up, there were always characters. Like I love New Orleans because it's gritty and you can be who you want to be. Like everybody is just the same. And so it's like, you don't have to do white kitchens and neutral sofas because it's going to have to last you 10 or 15 years with a product that will be here thousands of years because on your sofa, because you don't want to get it dirty. Like, no, go ahead and live your life. If you want to put a blanket on your sofa for the winter and take it off, do whatever you want to do. Just don't be afraid. There is no mistakes. I have a retail space, and that being said, it's a different buyer to be able to put something in a store that's not as high a quality as designers, because we're like your gate to the world and being able to resource and find things and travel. And I bring things back from Italy or Mexico all the time, not knowing where it's going to go. But I think you just start educating yourself, go to museums, go to flea markets, go to antique shows, and just walk and see what you like and start your own collection.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. Before I let you go, I want to launch into a few fun rapid fires for you.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Sure.
Okay. What would you splurge on if you had an additional, I'm going to make it $75,000. We're not going to go millions. We're going to sort of like, what are you buying?
Well, that's given that I've already given my money away and, done all those things to make you feel good. I would say that it would probably be maybe towards my second book or a piece of art, because art makes the difference. Those would be the two. And I like supporting artists.
Great. What is your favorite style or moment in design?
Deco. I like deco a lot because I think it goes all ways.
Yeah, I feel like deco has influenced so many styles and people.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Word association. First word that comes to mind when you think of Wales.
Oh, a couple words. Dragon, green, family.
California.
Light.
Atlanta.
Trees and beautiful architecture.
You do have great architecture in Atlanta. Which designer, dead or alive, would you take to dinner so that you can chat with them about design and art and everything else that you love?
I don't know if I could think of one, but they're in the same time period. So I'd say Billy Baldwin and Halston, and we would go to dinner and then we'd go to Studio 54.
I would like to come, and I think my +1 should be John Saladino.
Yes. Oh my gosh, we would have so much fun. Yes, John would really have a good time. Done. I love that. That's great. Yes. I'm gonna be like Bianca and riding a horse.
I will have to figure out what my entrance will be. What is the one thing that you will always find in a Melanie Turner project?
I would say fantastic art, because art makes a difference. Everybody can buy the same sofa, but for the most part, people don't buy the same art. So I would say definitely good art.
Thanks so much for being part of DesignTV today. It's so great to chat with you.
It was great. Thank you so much, Pam.
Hey design friends, this is Cindy Allen, editor-in-chief of Interior Design, and today I have the pleasure of sitting down with the president and CEO of Miller Knoll, Andi Owen. And boy, we have a whole lot of design and business to discuss. So let's get to know Andi better, hear all about her vision for Miller Knoll, their commitment to a better world, and of course, we'll talk about the future of work. So are you ready? Here we go. Andi, I'm so happy to see you.
Cindy, me too. It's been a while. So glad we can finally connect with all the craziness in the world. And thank you for using our new name. It's so nice to hear.
Of course. Well, so for everyone out there, which is so cool, is that like Andi was so generous about talking to us, like almost at the beginning of the pandemic, I want to say. It was a really long time ago. And we started taping, and then technology, Wi-Fi was not allowing it to happen. So it's kind of crazy that like, oh, in between, look what happened.
Just a few things, right? For all of us.
I know. So it really does feel like it's the right time to chat. And I thank you so much for being so generous with just your thoughts and openness to the industry and sharing with all of us.
I'm so glad to be here.
Yeah. So, all right. First of all, for everyone out there, you'll tell us, but you really had an illustrious career in an entirely different industry. And it's given you a unique perspective for sure. And now you've had the advantage, you've been with us in it for a few years, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts on the industry and what really drew you to us. Maybe to get started, just share some highlights of your background.
Oh, I'm not sure I would call it illustrious, Cindy, but that's very kind of you. You know, I spent the majority of my career in the fashion industry, and I have always really been attracted to sort of that intersection of creativity and business. And when I landed at the Gap, when I was early in my career, I found that. And I think it's, you know, a lot of people's first jobs, but it was an amazing place to learn and to grow. And there are a lot of things I carried from that industry into this. But it was a great career. And I would say I didn't really think I would find another industry that was as exciting or as wonderful. And here I am. And I have to say that there's so many wonderful things that drew me here. But number one, as you know, from being in the design industry for so many years, the people. So the talent and the creativity and just the amazing folks that I interact with every day have been just fantastic.
You know, I say, you know, when people are outside of the industry, I always say, wow, you are so lucky to have found us, right? Yes. Don't you feel like that? I mean, fashion is, I have lots of friends in fashion too. So, but still, once you make it into the design world, it's like, wow.
Yeah. Well, you know, I think all of us that have come from creative industries have gone through the whole, you know, design thinking and what is design thinking? But until you actually are surrounded by people that are actually committed to problem solving design and how it can change people's lives, I think that to me was just a really, really great window to open. And then I say this all the time, but going from an industry that was so transformed by the digital revolution and so shaken to the core to another industry that's kind of in the process of the same transformation has been a really interesting and unique process. And the last thing I'll say is that what I love about this industry is that I really feel like not only are we solving problems, but we are creating things that make people's lives better and things that are not disposable, things that are heirlooms, things that you can hang on to, whether that's the amazing design of a space or a furniture product. So that's been a pretty nice transition for me as well.
I mean, fashion is so quick. It's definitely quicker than design for sure. For sure. I know you'll talk about that, but we used to always say that we sort of followed fashion, but it's very unique these days that everyone is interested in design, right? Everybody wants to be close and touch design because, as you said, the transformation in people's lives.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And you know, you might say that the last, 18 months or however long it's been has been, difficult and horrible and chaotic and crisis. But to me, there's so many opportunities and so many interesting problems for us to solve and to think about, because not only has the way we work changed, but the way we live has changed so dramatically. And so when you think about design and the impact that design can have on the world and what we do as a broader community every day, I think it's just a really, really interesting and exciting time to be a part of it.
For sure. Okay, so I want your perspective and those observations that you see as being, well, you're not an outsider anymore, but that other kind of experience that you had Give us the truth. Give us some truths.
You know, you said it before, Cindy, and I'll echo it. Fashion is really fast. The industry that we're in now is a little bit slower. And I think for me, having come from an industry that was so transformed digitally and so shaken, coming to this industry was a little different, a little hard. And I think in some ways, we do have some catch up to do as far as how technology can enable what we do and how we think, how we design, how we solve problems. And in some ways, the pandemic, I think, has really brought that to the forefront and has sort of forced so much of that transition and so much of that change on our industry. But I have to say at the same time that I think the thoughtfulness and the core capability of understanding what we're here to do and how it benefits the end user or the client, I would hate to give that up in favor of speed. I do think there's a nice balance in how we think about what we do, especially at Miller Knoll, and I think in the design industry as a whole. So I wouldn't want to make us too much faster, but I think that the world has changed enough that I think that's one of the things that the industry will benefit from.
For sure. I still think about over this time period, the pleasure that the designers had when they got back together in the office to do their job, the part of their job that mattered the most that you couldn't do virtually. And there is something about that is very gratifying to know that it can't all be done, as you said, over airways or because of speed.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that. I was sitting with John Hoke, who's the creative director at Nike, and he was lamenting how you can't have a spontaneous creative interaction on a video screen. Like everything is very scheduled. So having that when you're back in person, and in some ways, we were all moving towards more of a hybrid or remote environment to begin with, but this great experiment has really let us see the good and the bad of what that looks like. And that's one of those things that I think we've all missed, particularly those people in the creative professions like us.
Yeah. How hard was it for you having pretty much just gotten there and being a leader? How personally, how difficult was that?
Oh gosh, I think it was probably the same for me as it was for everyone else. It was really hard, but what I have to say is, as I'm sure you know, I have a great, amazing group of people that I work with, and I take very little credit for what we went through, and I give all credit to them because, our manufacturing plants worked throughout the whole crisis. We had amazing people putting their brains towards how we could get through this and creatively solve a whole number of problems. So it's been hard, but I think a real benefit, and I can't speak for Knoll Legacy because I wasn't involved in the business, but in hindsight, the Miller Knoll, both cultures, we're very purpose-driven organizations. And I think in times like these, more than ever, our responsibilities as leaders is to really keep people focused on that purpose. And, our purpose is to design for the good of humankind. And that's a great purpose when you're trying to get through a pandemic, right? And I think, Andrew at Knoll did the same thing. So I have to give a ton of credit to the team for rallying around, and then also just being able to rely on all these thousands of people that are really purpose-driven.
Well, thanks for that. Yeah, that's for sure. Okay, so we have to talk about this. We want to talk about this. You made headlines earlier this year. Oh my God, you made headlines when you announced the union of Herman Miller and Knoll to create Miller Knoll. So I want to know everything, but maybe you can just give us share part of the journey.
Yeah, it's one of the things when I first got to Herman Miller that was on my mind, and I was sort of like, oh, I wonder if I'm the first person that's ever thought of this. Well, I'm not. And I would say that both the leadership at Knoll and leadership at Herman Miller have over the years really looked at this as a combination. And I think one of the reasons is there's so much shared legacy and history and so many commonalities between how we think about what we do. Certainly all the special friendships between the Eameses and Saarinen and all those people in Cranbrook in the background certainly tie us together from a legacy perspective. But I think going back to how we view design and its importance in what we do every day and the products that we create really ties us together. And so now, kind of as one of the largest design companies in our industry, I think it's a pretty dramatic and transformative time. So in many ways, it feels a little bit like it was meant to be over the years. And in other ways, it feels like really just an exciting moment in time, I think, for the industry and for both of our organizations to come together.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting when you talk about the commonalities.
Yeah.
Don't they say it's something about like, you know, the line between something that's much, the line between love and hate is very close or something like, you know what I mean? Like two companies that had that did, you know, you say that and you go, yes, of course, all those commonalities, but they were competitors, right? So
Yes.
it makes sense when you say that, when you bring it up in that way, when also when you think about, or as you were probably going through the process, this idea of somehow you guys were on paths that were meant to be together.
Well, I think you're right. We were fierce competitors. And I think along with being fierce competitors comes a very, very healthy level of respect, right? There's people that you're always afraid that show up at an RFP next to you, and you don't want to see those people because they have such great competitive strengths. And I think Noel was always one of those. And part of that is our commitment to some of those things that are common. And I think another thing, Cindy, is our culture and how we think about our partnerships with the design world, how we think about innovation, how we think about problem solving. Those things are super similar. And then if you kind of look back to transformative points in time in history, and I think about Florence Knoll and the planning unit and how that kind of changed the way corporate environments were, and then Robert Probst and the cubicle, I mean, like it or lump it, that was also a moment in time. So those kinds of things really do create kind of this fabric, but also, you know, the perceptions of competition. And when you actually get into the two companies, I think we've had the real blessing and privilege of now of seeing the other side, which is, oh, wow, look at this amazing, talented group of people that brought together kind of 1 + 1 makes 3.
Right. Yeah, that's terrific. What is the process with bringing these two companies together? Like, what has that been like?
I can say, honestly, it's a massive effort, right? I mean, I think any integration is. I think ultimately our goal throughout the process has been to really make sure that we are bringing the best of both legacy organizations together, because we do have just an amazing group of people. I think we're lucky that we share similar values and beliefs, but the critical thing here is of the 19 brands that we're bringing together, every single one of them has their own kind of zeitgeist and their own design aesthetic and point of view. And as we think about integration, you know, I always say it's kind of like getting married. You know, you used to pay rent twice and you everything, all of a sudden you can combine your forces and invest in the future. But at the same time, you don't want to lose your individual personality. So that's the caretaking that I think has been most top of mind for us. Along with really thinking about how do we address the customer facing and partner facing parts of this first? So how do we make sure that we're showing up in front of the people that we're serving and our design partners in the world in as organized a way as we can quickly? Because everybody wants to get to the other side of this quickly. So it's a big process, but we have a lot of smart people working on it. So we'll get through it.
Yeah, you know, also the A&D industry, I mean, the designers, they kind of tell you also what they need if you ask them, right? They're very open and very passionate, and they're a great support because we're all together, right?
Yeah, it's true, Cindy, and it's been great because part of this process was we did a lot of interviews with our design partners, and we found out a lot of great information about, okay, what do they want us to do first, and what do they want to see? What could we do more of on both legacy companies? So that's been fantastic. And I would say with any situation like this, we're going to make mistakes along the way, and we're going to do some things well and not well. But we're really, really fortunate to have such strong partnerships in the design community, and our commitment to that continues. And we know that we will always get honest and thoughtful feedback, and that helps us, right? It helps us provide what our partners need, and it also helps us be better and be more innovative as we move forward.
Yeah, I always like kind of smile at the designers too, because they tell you, like, sometimes they just tell you how they feel about something. Yes. They're like very forthright and upfront, whether you want to hear it or not, right? So
yes, and I love that, actually, and I think I speak for most of the folks in the company. We love that. That's important because that's what makes us better, right? Yeah. That feedback and that constructive criticism, and also the occasional, atta-girls and atta-boys.
Right.
Also,
exactly. What should we expect to see next, and maybe most importantly, what should the A&D clients, your clients, what should they expect to see next?
That's a great question. And, I think over the next 3 to 4 months, you'll start to see our branding roll out. For those of you in New York, we were in Times Square with our branding for Miller Knoll and NASDAQ and our new stock ticker, which was really exciting. So you'll start to see kind of the Miller Knoll identity come to life.
Congrats on that. That's amazing.
Yeah. Thank you. It's been really great. And then for A&D clients, I would say probably the most significant next step has really been all the work we're doing towards building out our Miller Knoll dealer network. This has been a really thoughtful process. And from the beginning of this journey, I think one of the most compelling things to us about this merger was our combined product portfolio. And along with that, we really have to leverage that portfolio, but also make it easier for our partners and our dealers to access it, specify it, order it, all of those things. So we've been working behind the scenes to make sure that dealer network is set up so that we can work with our partners.
Yeah, I'm sure it's a very complex process. And but hey, the good news is that, as you say, that designers are going, hello, I want to start ordering.
Right.
That's amazing. Yeah.
I mean, God forbid it was the opposite, right? But so now we've got a couple of small market pilots, working with Miller Knoll dealers, so we can learn all that fun stuff about the logistics and back of house and technology and all of that stuff. So we'll work through that for the next couple of months. And then by mid 2022, we should be complete with that transformation. And that's the first step I would see. And then I would say, in the meantime, it's business as usual for all of our dealer partners, and we'll continue to work with both legacy businesses.
That's amazing. Yeah. Well, there you go. So it's happening, everybody. It's happening.
It's happening.
It's happening. It's happening. Okay. So let's segue over to something that is really important to all of us, and something we need to talk about, which is social impact.
Yeah.
And what would you say is your vision for how Miller Knoll can positively affect change in communities, help better people's lives? What kind of initiatives have you got planned?
Listen, I think, our purpose, which I said before, designing for the good of humankind, all the words in that purpose really matter. And I think in the DNA of both of our organizations has been a commitment to not only sustainability of the environment, but sustainability of integrity in our communities and diversity. And so I think we'll continue kind of to leverage design, not only to problem solve for beautiful environments, but also to problem solve for people's lives. We think we can be integral, and we think the design community is integral to solving some of these larger problems in our society, which, as we all know, in the last couple of years have become even more important. And I have to say, Cindy, I was actually pretty shocked and embarrassed when I started to look at the stats of what the design community looks like, and how few Black designers we actually have in our world. And so when we really started to familiarize ourselves with some of the issues there, we got the idea to launch the Diversity in Design Collaborative. And Herman Miller and Knoll were both founding members of this. And really the purpose of this is to bring like-minded companies together to share best practices, to make our efforts more concerted, to really find ways to increase the talent pipeline for Black and Brown designers. So whether that's from introducing them to the fabulous career of design and all sorts of design, graphic, interior, you name it, at a younger age, to helping them find educational opportunities, to helping them find internships, and then ultimately to helping them find work. So we sort of launched this idea at sort of like a kitchen table. Hey, what if we build it, will they come?
Right.
And then they did. We had 19 founding companies, and we've doubled that, and then over 300 companies that are knocking on the door to get involved. So this is really not about Miller Knoll. It's about, I think, the design community and the difference that we can make. So that's one of the things that we're doing, and I'm excited to see the impact that I think we'll make there.
Yeah, for everyone out there. So it's DID, right?
DID. We have a website. We have a great team of people that are dedicated to bringing folks together. And again, it's just a great environment to share ideas, to see what other people are doing, and to bring resources together so that we can, again, make a concerted effort to solve the problem.
Can you share some of your sustainable initiatives?
I would say on the sustainability front, we've joined together with Next Wave Plastics. I'm sure you saw.
Yeah.
I am a dyed-in-the-wool environmentalist, so I've kind of found myself in the perfect place at Miller Knoll. But we really tried to find a way that we could not only reduce our use of single-use plastics, but also look at our products and see if we picked one product that could make the biggest difference to use ocean-bound plastics, what would it be? And so we picked Aeron. And we spent a couple of years trying to figure out how to make it with ocean-bound plastics. And we're super excited that we've launched it, and we anticipate we'll take about 23 million plastic bottles from reaching the ocean. So that's one of the initiatives that we have. We have tons more. Yeah. And then the last thing I'll say on this, we have a day of purpose. This is our second annual day of purpose, which was yesterday. It's election day in the US. And we use that to, we thought if we gave people the day off, it would remove some obstacles to voting, which we think is a big issue in the world. But also for our global employees, really to give them a day off to volunteer and to do things that matter in a way that gives them purpose. And so every time we do this, it's only the second time, but I'm so inspired by what people go out and do and how they give back to their communities. So those are just a few of the things that we're doing.
It's a lot.
It's a lot, but it's part of who we are. And we think it'll make a difference. Every little bit helps, right?
For sure. And I'm so proud of the entire design industry, just in terms of their willingness and wanting to change and move to something better. I mean, that is the thing about the design industry, right? They are change agents. So when you talk about diversity or when you talk about sustainability, I mean, everyone wants to actually have a conversation about, right? This is how you change. So,
and it's so interesting that you say that, Cindy, because one of the things I've noticed, while being shocked at the numbers and the data and representation, what I've also been shocked and really surprised and happy about is how quickly this community has banded around this as a problem and has looked for solution and jumped in. And I think it's just that mindset of innovation and problem solving that I think is really inspirational. So I have a ton of faith and confidence this community will solve this problem like we solve so many others.
Let's talk about something we've been talking about, which is the future of work. The big question that doesn't really have one answer. Actually, thank God it doesn't have one answer.
No.
But I agree. Do you believe that offices are still relevant? I think I know the answer.
Yeah, I think you do, Cindy. It's the burning question, and it will be no surprise to you that I say yes. I think shared workspaces are still relevant. Our VP of Insights, Ryan Anderson, always kind of likens the experience of an office to a restaurant. It's like you may have an amazing kitchen at home and you may be a great cook, but the restaurant offers you an experience that you can't necessarily get in your home, and we feel the same way. But to your earlier point about sort of how this workspace and everything is evolving, we've really been using all of our own workspaces as labs. And so we started innovating and changing our retail workspaces in Stamford, Connecticut. We've used the design yard in Michigan, Maine site in Michigan, our Hong Kong offices to really redo them and say, if we were to take a neighborhood approach and we were to look at every function and how they want to come together and collaborate, how they want to work together, how would we change our own spaces so that we can account for hybrid and technology? And what if you have meetings where only 3 people are there and the rest are virtual? So really taking that as an opportunity to learn and innovate on our own campuses, because we've been back in the office for quite some time now, and our manufacturing folks have never left the office. So as we kind of learn and make our own mistakes and have our own victories, then it gives us the opportunity to share that with all of our clients, because they're all figuring it out too. I think I've spent more time with other CEOs talking about shared workspaces and how we're going to come back in the last couple of months than I have in my whole career. So a really interesting time and lots of learning there.
Yeah, I'm obviously been talking to designers nonstop, and it is for them is also such an exciting time to have those conversations with their clients, right? They haven't had that type of conversation maybe in their entire careers, just in terms of this like almost unending flexibility of how people work. And for them, it's also a great freedom and a great opportunity to think differently. I mean, look, I think you said that too. we've been doing a lot of things right, getting up,
Right.
getting ready to the, so there's a lot for us to be proud of, but
Yeah.
this other type of shift is new for everybody. And to talk about it and think about what is the future of the office look like, it's there. It's just going to be different for everybody, right?
Absolutely. And I think that difference is what makes it fun. Get
Yeah.
to try, how can you be intentional about the experience you want? What's the feedback you're getting from your employees and what do they need and want? And that's really critical. How are they feeling? Some of the stuff that we've learned is that there's so much desire to have flexibility in working, but it's not just where you work, it's when you work. We founded Future Forum and we got so much information from being part of that group, and that flexibility that we've all gotten around so many parts of our lives is going to be really critical to inform our spaces going forward.
And for sure, I always say this, no matter what, everyone is different, and certainly no one size fits all at all, ever.
Yeah.
But what's so great about it is the world needs the design community to get them there. The whole design community, the designers, the architects, the manufacturing, the product, all of it is it's going to keep changing, and that's what's exciting.
Totally agree.
How do you make the hard decisions? Like for you, what allows you to make the hard decisions? How do you have the courage to make the hard decisions about you? How do you do that?
How do I make the hard decisions? I listen a lot, Cindy, and I surround myself with people that are different and smarter and have lots of ideas. And so I ask a lot of questions. I'm annoyingly like a toddler in that way.
Really?
I ask why 107 times a day. And I think that mindset, I'm a naturally curious person. I consider a lot of different things. So when it comes time to make a hard decision, and I think we've all had to make a lot more of them in the last few years, that mindset of really trying to be curious and trying to understand a variety of viewpoints helps kind of guide my internal compass, right? And I think that's important. And the other side is you have to know yourself, and you have to know the values of the organization you represent and your own values. And I think that integrity and that commitment to purpose and values keeps me very grounded in what to do, because sometimes, many times the right thing is not the easy thing.
Right.
But we know what it is. And so I think that combination of those things really helps me, in life and at work.
Right. Do you think that there's, do you think there's something about you that you left something very successful? The timing of going to Herman Miller at the time to making big changes in a time where the world is making big changes.
Yeah.
I mean, do you reflect on that?
I do. I mean, I think when you go through life, listen, I'm at the age and the stage where I can make choices. Yeah. But when I left my last career and I jumped and I said, I'm going to go to graduate school and I'm going to say no to jobs for a year and I'm just going to see what happens, that's really scary. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it's really liberating. And I think when you live through making difficult decisions like that for yourself, and you come out the other side to a whole new world with a whole lot of experiences, it gives you the confidence, and it also gives you the courage to try new things. And I think in the design community, we're trying new things and innovating every day and failing. I fail miserably all the time, every day, in many ways. And I think that gives me the courage and confidence to make hard decisions, because I know at the other side of it will be better.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, it's just great advice for people to live by. There's so many people right now in the world that are making changes in their lives. And yes, you're just a wonderful example of, of strength and courage. And as you say, making tough decisions to try to move things forward in the best possible light, really for all of our futures, right?
Yeah, and I think you're right, because I think actually this time has really made people reflect a lot more on life and what they want in life and make those hard decisions. So
Well, listen, I know we could talk for another couple hours.
We could. You're so much fun to talk to.
I know, you're so good. And I know the design community is like embracing the change and super excited about what's coming next. And if you want to share like a final thought about anything as I see the light going down in my neighborhood right now, something about the light ahead.
Thank you, Cindy. We're so excited about sort of the joining of these two amazing modern design companies in the future here. We have a great group of people, and we will continue to work closely with all of our design partners, and we welcome that feedback. We welcome that interaction because we think that gives us strength and helps us move into the future. So we couldn't be more excited about the future ahead and being able to rely on the strengths and talents out there in the community. And it has been such a pleasure to talk to you.
Yeah, for me too. By the way, we always say at Interior Design, we say we're unapologetically modern. And now you have two modern forces together with Miller Knoll. And I really am sincerely excited about what's ahead. And I want to thank you, Andi Owen, for being so generous with your time and your thoughts and your honesty about the company.
Thank you, Cindy. It's been such a pleasure to chat with you.